Hey everyone, thanks for coming to check out our reaction video to Canon's interview with Ghostcrawler, the game director for the future Riot MMO. I will be releasing a full-length video where we go over and speculate on a much deeper level the entire interview later in the week, so make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to receive notifications. I mean, you're into that kind of thing. Also, remember the discussion is continuing over on our community Discord as well as live on stream Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And with all that shilling out of the way, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy. I mean, I guess let's just get right into it, right? You guys aren't here for me.
Riot MMO RPG. Before getting into this interview, though, there are a couple of things that I do want to mention. First, this is a podcast.
This is the part, by the way, that Riot made him mad.
Style interview where Greg and I are pretty much just openly talking, and the focal point around our discussions is around his personal life as well as his personal preferences, his influences, and his experiences when it comes to the MMO genre, both as a dev and as a player. My goal was to introduce Greg Street, the person, and give you guys some insight to the man that is going to be directing the most anticipated MMO RPG. Now, some of you guys may know already, if you watch the teaser, that the original cut was about 2 hours and 10 minutes long. In this version that you're going to be seeing, I had to cut it down to like an hour and 20 to 30 minutes. Unfortunately, there were some things that I did have to remove, but some of the cuts were also for the purpose of viewing pleasure, just to make it a little bit more straightforward for you guys.
Actually, like,
a little bit
confirming that he had to cut stuff because Riot didn't want it. Like, that's actually 100% confirmed now. So now we know. That's good
to follow. I do want to give a special thanks to Riot for working alongside me with this and allowing me the opportunity to provide this video for you guys. Before starting the video, be sure to check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming on that platform.
It was over 2 hours long.
And let's begin.
And now we're watching an EVE Online ad. Now it's what was it? It was an hour and 20.
Thank you guys for joining me today.
1, 2, 3.
I have a super special guest that I've been very, very excited to talk to. Today I'm joined here by Mr. Greg Street himself, aka Ghostcrawler. He's the director of the Riot MMO that's gonna come out in like the year 4000 or something, whenever that's gonna come out.
I feel like we actually need to do like a bingo, but I'm just too lazy to set it up. But I think we're gonna have a couple bingo. Like, this is my personal opinion, not regarding the Riot MMO. Canon's going to say like 100 times, by the way, he's going to say, so I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this, because I already heard him say that the little snippet that they showed. So I can't think of enough other things, but bingo would be really fun for this.
And today we're just going to be talking about the man himself and his thoughts, and talking about some games and his life and things like that. So I'm super excited to do that. Greg, could you maybe give us a quick introduction? Let us know who you are.
Yeah, I'm Greg Street. I'm an American video game developer. I've been making games for a long time. I'd have to count 20-something years.
My dog is here watching it with us.
Started off with real-time strategy games, Age of Empires, then went to a little place called Blizzard and worked on World of Warcraft for several years. Managed to leverage that into a job at Riot. I was lead designer.
Let's not forget I have like a 15-minute video of Greg Street, a full documentary. So if you guys want to watch that at any point.
On League of Legends for a while. Then I went over and took on a job kind of managing the League of Legends IP, because we wanted to do a lot of cool things with it, like make a TV show,
or an MMO.
And then started an MMO set in the same universe, which is where we are today.
So in this section, I want to talk about just your history. And it's interesting because you kind of have two sides, right? Like, you've got the industry side, the work side, and then you've got the gamer side. Maybe we could start with the gamer side real quick. Can you just, I know you mentioned a few games that you played. Can you kind of give us a little bit of info on just your background as a gamer?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm super old school. I've been playing games my whole life. Like, I played
it's a nice
video
shirt,
games
though.
when they were like
This
black
is a nice
and white,
shirt.
black and green screen, old
weird,
like Pong,
weird dinosaur in the background, though.
2600, the first NES, then SNES, and then every Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation console along the way. A lot of PC games. Again, back when it was like black screen with the monitor yay big.
Right.
Till today, it's always been a big part of my life. Back from when it was like pretty uncool to where now it's super mainstream, and was fortunate enough to leverage it into an actual job. And
That's
sometimes,
awesome.
it's funny. I was interviewing someone the other day for a job, and they asked like, oh, one of my concerns is if I get into video games, it's then not going to be fun to play games anymore. And I'm like, oh no, don't worry about that. Like everyone I know still plays a ton of games.
Oh, that's awesome. Despite working for a video game company, I would have thought the same thing. If you work for a company, you're not going to really be able to really play that game. But I guess that's not really the case.
I streamed 30
no, not at
MMOs
all.
in a
Like
month,
when
and
I
I
was
kind of hate
working on
MMOs right
WoW,
now.
I would like work on the game all day and then go home at night and
Really?
Whatever. Yeah.
Did your friends know who you were?
It depended. Like my really close friends knew who I was, but we kind of kept it secret from the whole guild because we didn't want it to be a big thing. And at the time, Blizzard was a little funny about that. If people knew who you were and started kind of stalking you online, you would go into the witness protection program and they would make you move servers and change.
Really? Wow.
I don't know if they still do that, but that was their policy at the time, so I kept it super secret.
Right. Okay. Well, do you plan on playing the Riot MMO if and when it comes out?
If it comes out, I plan on playing it a lot. Like seriously, I have people at work already talking about
the guild.
Hey, are we gonna make a guild? And I'm like, whoa, slow down.
Like 15
Okay,
years
so
ago.
is the MMO genre your bread and butter? Is it your baby? Like, is that what you want? Is that how you identify as a gamer in that genre? Or just are you kind of like, RTS and just this and that, and it's just one of the many that you enjoy doing or playing?
Yeah, I play a lot of different games. I did play a crap load of WoW even before I started working at Blizzard. And that was really my first MMO. I dabbled in EverQuest. I had played some older games. None of them really stuck. Warcraft's the first one that really
I actually lost a lot of respect for Canon and how he's
ton of it even before
handled this, but that's a whole other thing.
But I don't play a lot of MMOs. They're a huge, as I'm sure you know, they're a huge time investment, and it's hard to play lots of MMOs at a high level. And I'm a really competitive player, so I want to see the end game. I want to be at the end game, so it's hard to play a lot of them. Let's see. Other than MMOs, I'm the kind of player that's motivated a lot by we would say mastery, getting better at something. So I like games with a relatively high skill component. I love a lot of the Dark Souls games I play.
I knew he was gonna say Elden Ring. Every single time he talks about his MMO, he talks about Elden Ring or Dark Souls. He even said it's gonna be part of the game in some fashion.
Over and
they
over
talk
and over
about
again
it while they're brainstorming ideas.
Experimentation of different builds. A lot of competitive games that are like just fun to play with friends. Not a lot of sports games, but other, played a lot of Team Fortress 2 back in the day, CS after that.
Team Fortress is fucking amazing too.
I played a lot of Valorant even before it launched. I'll play just about everything. Not a ton of mobile games yet. I know there's some out there that are pretty cool and I've kept up with. I play a lot of Switch games. I travel a lot, and the Switch is great for that.
I gotta ask you, what are your 3 favorite MMOs as a gamer?
Wow.
This is going to be very interesting, actually. This is going to be big. Whatever he says right here is going to be important.
Let me think. World of Warcraft's the easy one.
We know that one.
After that, what would I say? And I know people are going to analyze the crap out of.
I'm not, I swear.
I liked Star Wars Galaxies for the promise it made, which was you can do anything. You want to be a dancer, I think you could be a baker, whatever. You don't have to be a superhero. You could just be a normal person.
That is so fun to hear.
That real open-endedness was
say something about the housing and
pretty
towns.
Impressive. And going even farther back than that, Ultima Online. I played every Ultima game growing up.
Right.
And that game came out. That was the first real MMO, and it just blew our minds that was you could play these games you loved multiplayer. And then you could debate whether or not.
I'm not analyzing anything. What do you mean? I'm definitely not analyzing anything. What?
It's an MMO or not, but I'm very impressed with Destiny and what Bungie has done with just kind of making high production values, pretty quick content cadence, and kind of shown that hey, MMOs don't all have to look the same. Like it's maybe it's a looter shooter, maybe it's a
quick content cadence. That's important.
I think that kind of shows you that MMOs don't have to just be. Again, I'm picking my words really carefully here. But you don't have to be a WoW clone to be an MMO. How about that?
Right. And graphically, it looks kind of insane. Well, it really did when I played it. Yeah.
He made a lot of points about he's also said there's a few things that are recurring phrases. I like Destiny, so fight me on that. I play it once every 3 years. It's one of those games where I play for a month once every 3 years and have a good time, and then I'm like, this sucks, and I quit for another 3 years. There's a few things that he says all the time. One is like, we're not making a WoW clone. The other one is that he loves the Dark Souls or Elden Ring franchise. There's a few things that he keeps bringing in, but it's not a good, it's not a good main game. But like I said, fun every few years. It's a looter shooter, right? As far as the work
goes, though, you've been working in the industry for quite a while.
You play Warframe if you want.
Before, and now you're working with Riot. Could you walk us through a little bit about your work history and how that's been for you? I am interested in the cultural difference, though.
Yeah, so I'll start with the first place I was, which is Ensemble Studios, later became part of Microsoft, and we worked on the Age of Empires series. They also made Halo Wars. That was after I left. That company was started by a bunch of like non-gamers, almost as a spin-off.
I did marketing for Halo Wars too.
Corporation. So
back when I did video game stuff.
It was fun in that we really had no idea what we were doing. It was very much a kind of a startup culture, except we were in an actual office in the corner of this corporation rather than a garage somewhere. My first desk was out in the hall because there was no more office space. So I just had a desk in the hall. And the desk I had was shared with like the office photocopier, and even crazier than that, so you have, when you're making games, you have bug software. Jira is one. There's a lot of different types of software. People keep the bugs there. Back then, networking wasn't as good as it is now, so the bug software was actually my computer. Like, they just gave me the bug software computer and let me do my work on that. So every now and then I'd have to tab out and let someone like check their bug in and then tab back to my game, which is, that's just what it was like back in the day. It was, I would say, unprofessional, but not unprofessional in the sense they treated us badly. Right. Just that it felt more like a bunch of dudes hanging out, like, let's make a video game.
Like a budget setup.
When he's talking about Elden Ring, I pretty much don't think I don't think he's talking about like combat itself necessarily, but more like the way that when you lose, you feel like you learned something and you can kind of progress off of that and teach yourself how to get better, which is what the Souls games do best, right? And then as far as Elden Ring, I think he's probably more talking about like exploration, and it just feels good to go out into the world and have fun.
Pretty much.
Yeah. The company really wanted to be a great place to work, and they focused a lot on making sure we were happy. So we had like the Pop-Tarts in the pantry and lots of soda to keep us going, and we worked a lot, partially because it was fun and we wanted to be there, and like, go home to your apartment when you can be in this really cool office. That's like
early game design in general too. It's not just Blizzard.
The video game industry, that still is.
Early designer is like
that. But I really enjoyed it.
Every like software technology,
have an impact. The
Facebook,
thing that started to change a little bit was
Microsoft.
They were just getting into gaming. This was
not
right
an
around
excuse.
the time Xbox
they were all
launched,
shitty back then.
And I felt like they were having more and more of an influence on the kinds of games we would make. And I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Microsoft, but it was this giant corporation kind of coming in on top of the happy little studio we had. And at the time, there's like no way Age of Empires is going to move the Microsoft stock price, right? Like, so we were not taking that seriously. It felt like we were a kind of a line item veto. So when I fell in love with World of Warcraft and played it for a couple of years, I also just kind of cold called Blizzard and said, look, I love this game. Are there any opportunities to work on it? And my timing was really good.
I played a ton of Age of Empires.
If there's one message, you're
on like a school computer too.
There's a lot of luck in this industry, like any industry.
Right.
My timing at Blizzard was really good because Blizzard was starting to spin up a game that they called it was called Titan, that later, through many iterations, eventually became Overwatch. But I think a lot of people know it started as an MMO. And Blizzard was going to be a 2 MMO studio with World of Warcraft and then a MMO set in modern times called Titan. So a lot of the World of Warcraft team was being pulled over to start that new project. And they really needed some backfill on World of Warcraft. And they really needed what we call systems designers, which is what I do most of the time, which is kind of the math side, the number parts of making video games. Okay. So making a class and deciding, well, this class needs a certain number of abilities, and this is what damage should look like, and this is how much you should heal, and this is how to balance a game. Like, that was something done a lot for the RTS genre. So it felt like something I could combine that with the fact that I'd played so many hundreds of hours of World of Warcraft and and turn that into a job. And they were like, yes, we need some
I wouldn't even call
more
it a job.
senior
It just sounds like
designers, we
fun.
need some more design managers who could run a team.
Right.
So they pretty much hired me to take over the class team on World of Warcraft.
Interesting. Wow. Can I just, if I may interject, I just want you to know that I prefer playing fist-based classes. And if you guys don't have that in the Riot MMO, I usually tend to go towards warrior classes. I know Asmongold as well plays warrior-based classes. Go ahead, just make us OP. Okay, just
Awesome.
What the? Did you see the editing there? Look at this.
On World of Warcraft.
When he starts talking, watch him jump around.
Can I just, if I may interject, I just want you to know that I prefer playing fist-based classes. And if you guys don't have that in the Riot MMO, I usually tend to go towards warrior classes. I know Asmongold as well plays warrior-based classes. Go ahead, just make us OP. Okay, just
awesome.
There was like 6 jump cuts right there.
So, yeah, I played a warrior a lot. I was the main tank before I went to work at Blizzard. And then at Blizzard, I worked a lot on the warrior class. I said for a while I was the plate guy because I would do Warrior Paladin Death Knight. Even though I was like one of the lead designers, I still got my hands dirty with game design, which I honestly don't do anymore. This is my buddy Hudson.
That was
he's
so
adorable.
edited.
I'm a huge dog guy. I know I told you that before our interview, but
fist-based
classes.
Oh
I want to steal him if I could.
Slash Asmongold.
Right now, he doesn't know there's video on
6 jump cuts.
Yeah.
Yes, I love plate users. I didn't work on the monk class directly, but I helped.
Yeah, see now
they're
just assuming conversation about that stuff.
We want for the monk, and
interesting.
Yeah, and again, when people ask what kind of classes will we have in the League MMO, the chief answer I always give, take it or leave it, is look at the kind of champions we have, and you can think about what kind of class. The
kind of champions we have. Hey guys, if you 1 second, real quick plug, you've probably seen it if you're on my Discord. If you go to spun.gg and you go to classes here, these are the champions types that they have in League, and I've converted them over to classes for the potential MMO. We've got controller, fighter, mage, marksman, slayer, tank, and specialist. This is what you're going to see in the MMO. I'm like 99.9% sure this is what it's going to be. Maybe not specialist. I'm covering it up on my monitor, and I'm realizing you guys can't see when my hand is covering it up, but yeah, go check that out.
Classes you might turn those into.
Can we get 1 class reveal drop, please?
No.
Okay.
Come on.
I tried. Sorry, guys. I tried.
How are you that sure?
Okay.
You know what? Even if I did.
Because it just makes sense. He's also said that they're going to have the Holy Trinity, right? So tank is obviously a part of it. It's the thing they used in that, and he did just now, right now, confirm that if you want to know the kind of classes we will have in the MMO, just look at the champion classes from League of Legends. It's all but confirmed 100% at this point.
There's a good chance it would change anyway, so that's kind of the danger of talking about things too early.
I would say that I would bet money that you'll have at least 1 form of warrior class in it, though, right? Like, I mean, you know, you were talking about like Microsoft coming in and the whole corporate side. That's
the subclasses Juggernaut, Diver,
Blizzard
Vanguard, and Warden,
right? I think with Activision coming in. You know, I hear a lot of talk about, oh, you know, it's just not the same. The culture's not the same. Your thoughts on that, maybe?
Yeah, you know.
I mean, I haven't been there in like 9 years now, but I still have a lot of friends at Blizzard, and it was similar to the Microsoft acquisition in that while Blizzard was crushing it, Activision stayed far away. And once that second MMO I was talking about started to struggle, meaning it was getting really expensive and taking a while, that's when Activision stepped in a little more, and they're like, hey, Blizzard, we love your games, but they are way expensive and you are very slow. And I mean, yeah, both those things are true. And I just think the way Activision tried to get Blizzard to fix those 2 issues probably felt a little heavy-handed, a little kind of not Blizzard-y to the, maybe to players too, but I think to the team.
How have things been going with Riot? I mean, you guys got like Valorant, you guys got League of Legends, like everything you guys touch turns into gold. Now, is that a testament to like just the working environment and the culture of Riot, or is it just you guys just got lucky with like a few games? Like, what's the deal? It can't be luck, right? I mean,
there is an element of luck to it. Streaming and Twitch, I think, really helped League. It just came right at the right time when streaming became a big thing, and that I think really helped to elevate League of Legends. Esports was still kind of in its baby state when League came on, and now League is arguably. I mean,
when he has a jump cut every like 4 seconds,
I joined Riot after a trip to Asia where everyone in China and Korea were talking about League of Legends.
Mm.
And I was like, I played League of Legends, but I didn't realize it had become such a global
I think it's a
phenomenon.
combination. I know Canon's
And
Still
not,
is, by the way.
he's a mumbler.
Still is, yeah.
He's a,
when I got
I do it too when I edit my YouTube videos,
to the
but
States, I'm like, I gotta look at League of Legends. I need to take it more seriously.
you might have missed it too, but at
it's
the
like that Dota clone.
beginning,
like,
he said he had to
was...
edit out about 45 minutes because it was he was asked to, basically. So that's what they said at the beginning of the video.
It was doing so well.
Wow. Right.
I mean, it was heavily based on that formula, which was new at the time. And I think part of what Riot is really good at is looking at a game and saying, okay, there's something there that players really love, but there are also some rough edges. And I bet if we fix those rough edges, the game would become even more popular. And so, I mean, I could take no credit for it because I wasn't on League of Legends at the time, but decisions like, well, we're not going to have, turning radius, and we're not going to have denial and things like that. Dota fans were like, well, that's stupid that, you're going to ruin the game. But it actually ended up that it made the game more fun, more approachable, more sticky. And we got a really huge audience. And then the Valorant team kind of tried to do the same thing with tactical shooters. We're already really popular. We don't claim at all that we invented that genre, but we looked at it and said like, hey, some of the ways like that players cheat with peeker's advantage and bots and stuff like that. Like if we can fix that and we can kind of restore the competitive integrity, and instead of having the kind of
it's interesting he's notating bots while talking to a Lost Ark player, considering bots were the last nail in the coffin, right, for that game, in my opinion.
Overt military theme of Counter-Strike.
There's plenty of other nails.
Let's make up our own IP.
One of the
last ones. A little crazy and have these agents with different abilities. And I love Valorant. I think it's an amazing game. I'm so proud to be part of the company that produced that. And you ask what is the special sauce that makes that happen? It's really that above everything else, Riot places value on players. We don't want to disappoint players. We want players to say, yes, those people get me. They understand me. They know what kind of games I want. They know what I think is cool. They know what's hip right now. They can talk to me like a real person. And so we've always tried to really get inside the head of players, as well as, we like to play games ourselves.
Right.
And that is, it's exactly the reputation we wanted to get. Is we wanted every time we announced a new game for players to say, oh, I'm so excited because I trust that Riot's going to do a good job here. It was pretty unusual that we announced the MMO so early. And it was my boss, the CEO of the company, who said, it was his idea.
I don't play a lot of tactical shooters myself.
He wanted to do it for
There's times when I enjoyed them, but
just to make players excited and to kind of tell them
there's tons of different genres, right? I don't play Candy Crush,
awesome,
but I can respect it.
And the second thing was we know we needed to recruit a lot of people, and recruiting when you're saying, hey, will you come work for this game that I can't tell you anything about, is hard. It's hard to recruit people that way.
Very true.
And then third, he figured, probably rightly, it would leak anyway. Either someone at the company or players would find out about it, and rather than trying to hide it, let's just be upfront and say, hey, we're making an MMO, it's early, we don't have a cinematic yet, we're not going to even tell you what the name is yet, but if you don't mind being on a really long ride, we would love to have
Unreal was the first FPS I played. Unreal 2K3.
This journey with us.
That sounds so promising. And everything that you've just said is precisely the very reason why this game has so much hype, being 83 years away from releasing. It's 100%.
Wait, it was 45 a little while ago.
Oh, was it? Sorry, I'm throwing out different dates and waiting for you to be like, how did you know? You were talking a little bit about the world that we live in today being a little bit different with content creators and streamers, and it is. I mean, it's pretty crazy how big live streaming has become. How important is it to have content creators on board, not only for just the launch and promotion of the game, which is, that's a given, right? You want to have a big launch, but to keep them in the game? Is that a high priority? In what way do you want to keep them involved? What's the deal there? Sorry if I worded that poorly.
He's going to say how much he hates me.
I'm jet lagged like crazy. I came back from the States yesterday, and I'm just, so I hope that made sense. Sorry.
It does. It's really important, and for a really simple reason, which is players trust streamers and influencers, because like I remember this industry when we would go to E3 and there would be some like Hollywood celebrity up on stage talking about a game, and you'd be like, you never played this game, like you're just reading a speech that someone told you.
Right.
But for the most part, we know that the streamers, like, they're gamers and they're talking about a game because they love the game. And yeah, maybe sometimes you know, someone helps them out or they get exclusive access or get even paid or something. But I don't think a lot of streamers would stick with a game they hate.
Angry Joe's gone downhill quite a bit in the last.
Even when they play a game a lot,
basically since that video,
they're honest
honestly,
about what's working.
I remember that video.
What isn't working, and so in a really real sense, you know, they're thought leaders, and it's if your streaming community turns on you, like your players are going to turn on you too, because the players will feel like you know, a sense of betrayal, or oh, we thought they got us, but they really don't get us anymore. And the opposite is true. If you have people who are like, hey, if you listen to me, you should play this game. It's a great game. Even if you don't play the game, I'm going to talk about it a lot, and so it generates a lot of interest.
Right. Well, I'm down to play.
Another 3 months right there.
Give you a shout. So last question I want to ask you before.
Yeah, right. I'm down to play. His drink, by the way, it was like not there. Then he had his drink. Then it was gone again. Then he had his drink. Love it.
Go into
the jump cuts are insane.
Section, which is going to be the MMO talk. On that
stop talking about them. I promise.
About streamers and viewership and stuff. How important is viewership on Twitch and viewership on YouTube? How important is that for you?
It is important. It's not the most important thing, right? It's not how you
that jump cut right there. That's where he just said that OHEYSPUN sucks.
Live or die, but it is important. It builds a lot of hype. If it's a new game, players pay attention to that. They're like, wow, why is everyone playing this game? Maybe I should check it out. By contrast, if a game starts to fall off, they're like, what is this, you know, dead game meme or something like that? Like, I remember when Overwatch 1 launched, and for a little while, it passed League of Legends in viewership, and everyone's like, what does this mean? Is Overwatch the new thing?
Yeah.
And then for a while, they were trading off, and now League
Overwatch and League are like
totally
different
games. It
does
matter for that reason, is that it matters because players care about it and streamers care about it, and they watch those numbers. So
okay, so I do want to move on here and get to our next section, and this is a section that I very much want to talk to you about. I want to just give a quick disclaimer here. Everything that we're about to talk about in this section, for those of you watching at home, these are Greg's personal thoughts and opinions on just the MMO genre. Okay, this is not reflective of what's going to happen.
He's not responding to this, by the way.
Just two guys talking MMOs, right?
That right there, I'm pretty sure he recorded this at a second time and added it to the video. I'm like 90% sure, because that was just like an idle moment for Greg, and he was not responding to anything.
I'm going to open this up with my game. I would love to hear your thoughts on a game like Lost Ark. Number one, have you actually played Lost Ark, and to what extent?
I have played it. I have not
done a
ton of endgame, for starters, because it takes a really long time to get there.
Yeah.
My team at Riot has played it a lot, because it's a team of MMO players, and you know, honestly, Lost Ark stuck with them a lot longer than some of the other games they played. So I also just asked the team, like, hey, what would you say you really love about the game? So this is both my experience and what they said. For starters, like, I'm a combat guy. Like, it's hard for me to play a video game if the combat system is weak. I'll do it once in a while, but that's what I really enjoy. Lost Ark has great combat. Like, it has viscerality, which is kind of a fancy word, but we usually use it to mean, like, if you're a character with a giant
I'm not laughing about Lost Ark having great combat. I think the combat actually is pretty enjoyable for isometric. But I just keep laughing at the cuts, because they're so, like, you can see him start to wander off into something that he probably shouldn't say. And then it's like, you know, the team and I are really, anyways, Lost Ark's really great at combat. Like, he just skips like a whole train of thought there. And I wish I could go to Korea right now and look at the cutting room floor of Canon's PC. Like, I wish I could so bad. But, you know,
hits an enemy, you feel it. Like, it's
that
heavy
impact.
yeah, there's a sound effect and the enemy jumps back and responds. Like that feels, as a player, that feels awesome. And the opposite of that we might call floaty. That's where, you know, the weapon swung and I thought I hit, but there was no response, or maybe the
just like
the
a
hit
whoosh.
animation didn't line up.
Yeah, the combat of Lost Ark isn't the problem. It's the
and now I feel
gameplay
kind of
loop is really bad,
disappointed
or not enjoyable. It's
so
not,
I think they did
it's not bad. It's just not
an
fun.
outstanding job with that. The class design is stellar. At Blizzard, we talked a lot about what is the class fantasy. You said, you know, you love to play warrior, you love to play fist characters. So when you're making any game with characters, whether it's a RPG or an MMO or not, you think about, well, what are people who play this gonna like? And just to riff on warrior for a minute, if you're playing warrior, there's probably like a lot of weapons, or even if there's not a lot of weapons, like weapons are really important. If you have something that feels like a warrior and it's casting a lot of spells, people are gonna be like, well, this isn't what I thought.
Right.
You want someone who's like, the armor matters, the experience, the skill matters. They want to feel like a soldier, a gladiator. You know, it's all about that in your face melee, often big weapons, or at least, you know, you're very skilled with the weapons. And so and Lost Ark is great with that. They're class fantasy. The classes were interesting. You feel like
RNG owning and gear score chasing. Gear score chasing less of a problem, but the honing.
But it wasn't like the boring
really
same old.
Right.
I also like, I've all the reason
the horizontal progression's
I
all right
got
too.
so into WoW, the reason I've stayed with MMOs,
it's just the gearing and the RNG on it is just.
I really love the dungeon experience. I love a group of people getting together and having a challenge. And that's honestly gotten me into trouble sometimes as a developer, because as a game developer, if you make dungeons too hard, you know, you might churn out a lot of players. And I've made that mistake before. But as a player, I love the challenge of, oh crap, how are we going to get past this? Like, given our skills, given our gear, given our class mix, what is the right solution to this problem? I love that kind of like, okay, let's get in the huddle and talk about what we're going to do to get through this next part, because it's really hard. And then the reward, you know, when like a tough boss drops and everyone's cheering.
I love that shit.
And like someone gets a new weapon, like.
It can go too far, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have ever sat in raids in an MMO where you sit in front of the boss and you sit there for an hour talking about the boss. That's too much, I think, but I think there is a sweet spot there. I think you shouldn't be like in classic WoW where you run from boss to boss to boss and there's just no, there's not like, you're not solving any problem, right? You're just seeing who can get the most DPS on the meter, basically, or you're trying to speedrun. And there's a place for that. I think there's a place for speedrunning in an MMO, but there's something about like I don't know, this getting there, sitting, having your food, waiting. But once you got respawns coming from behind, then you're like, okay, this raid probably just sucks and you should find a better guild.
That is what I live for. Like, as a player, as a designer, I love that.
Absolutely.
And Lost Ark had great, challenging dungeons that really made you feel like, hey, you're gonna have to work at this. This is not a loot pinata. You're gonna have to think. You're gonna have to be at the top of your game. You're gonna fail a lot. And for me, I know it's not everyone's thing, but for me, that is what games are about.
That's interesting you say that, because that is something that I did want to bring up, and we can kind of mix this into the same topic. One of the things that Lost Ark is known for, I would 100% agree with you, by the way, the classes and the combat, amazing. And the third kind of thing that everyone that has played the game would tell you that makes Lost Ark stand out is the raiding experience. I don't know if you saw the latest raid come out in KR. It's crazy. And the fact that the game is top down, it gives it a new experience that you can't experience in like a third person perspective, right?
Look in his eyes.
In NA, we just got the third Legion raid, which is very difficult.
There was a cut there. There was a cut there when talking about top down and third person.
Have you experienced those Legion raids? And like, what are your thoughts on that?
I've not played them again.
Then they completely stopped talking about it.
Fuck.
You need to try a level of dedication. I have watched a lot of streams because, again, I love raiding. Like it's for me, and again, not for everyone, and that I understand that.
Right.
That is the pinnacle of the game, and that's what I want to, the part I want to get to, the part that I'm always excited about. And I agree with you on the camera angle. Like, part of the challenge we always had on World of Warcraft is when you make a really big boss and then you're a warrior up there fighting it, you see its toe.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
you don't get to see kind of the majesty of the whole creature on screen at once without pulling the camera out. I think it can also help it feel a little more like a battle scene when you can see like lots of people
He's
around
talking up
and
isometric a lot
get a
right now,
sense
though.
for where you are in the room rather than it just being, oh, I'm just going to beat on this giant bag of hit points in front of me.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. On the topic of raids, I know you prefer more difficult, challenging, you know, getting that feeling of, hey, we did this.
I am feeling less
you know,
certain about it being third person right now.
Hardcore versus casual. Now, I played WildStar. I played a lot of WildStar.
Oh, WildStar was awesome.
Yeah, right? I absolutely loved WildStar. Everything about it. But that game died in a hurry. And to this day, I think it's still a huge mystery. I mean, most people say, A, it was because there was a content drought at endgame, and or the raids were just simply too difficult, and they really, really catered towards the hardcores. I honestly still think that the WildStar rating, in my opinion, just the most difficult thing that I had experienced in a PvE world, personally.
Yeah. It was like a bullet hell shooter, right? The way you have to like avoid all of this stuff on the ground.
Absolutely, you know, and it was a great experience, but maybe that was the reason why it died. But then you got a game like Lost Ark where it's so successful because of how challenging the raids are. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
It is hard
to
look at a game and predict, like, yeah, this game is going to crush.
I think they've confirmed that they're separate projects too.
If it was that easy to do it, like every game would be a huge hit, you know?
Right.
It's sometimes hard. I was really pulling for WildStar because
I was too.
It looked, you know, it was what I wanted in a game, and they went all in. Like they're like, we're making an MMO, and I don't know, was it the setting was a little unusual? Was the
okay? Remembering Project F makes me feel a little bit better. I don't think they would release 2 isometric RPGs around the same time. I feel like that's just like too much. It's like, one would be, yeah, obviously an MMO RPG, but 2, that just seems like too much.
Timing not right? Had players moved on to different genres? It's hard to say.
What do you think killed it? If you just guess as a player.
At the end of the day, it didn't have a large enough player base.
They may have absorbed the team. I haven't heard anything about Project F in a long time.
Did it not? Did a lot of people try it and then kind of churn out? Did it never get that kind of critical mass of players? Because there have been, it's rare, but there have been games that were kind of sleeper hits for a while and then gradually picked up and suddenly were huge. Like Final Fantasy, their MMO, they had to do the big reboot, and now the game is more popular than ever. There's games like No Man's Sky, again, barely an MMO, if at all, but you know, people almost rejected it. And now look at Cyberpunk also is, people are like, oh, this game's bad. And now everyone's like, oh, wait, this game got really good.
Someone made a comment recently on one of my YouTube videos about, oh, great, we have an old man making an MMO for us, like it's going to suck. Every time I listen to Ghostcrawler talk about gaming and MMOs specifically, I can tell that this guy has his like finger on the pulse of gaming. Like he is paying attention. He is completely involved with it. He enjoys playing them. And there's no like, he's not like completely disassociated and just like a businessman at this point. He's not just trying to make money. He's actually passionate about the game, which every other fucking MMO that came out in the last 10 years was just all about money, right? And it didn't seem like there was any love for the games behind them. So great to hear.
Right. So you can do it. You can launch small or even disappointing and recover. But the opposite happens a lot true. And we've seen that over and over with MMOs where players join, they go for the level up, they get to the end game, maybe they even participate in PvP or raids, and then they're like, okay, I've done it, I'm done. Right. I'm gonna move on. And then maybe they come back, but maybe they don't, and now you've lost.
Right. Yeah. So the latest raid in Lost Ark, it's a 4-man raid, but the other Legion raids are 8-man raids. Now, there are other, like WildStar, it was like,
you guys, you watch my videos, right? You watch my videos on YouTube. You're all here because you watch my fucking videos on YouTube. Maybe a couple of you I knew before, but most of you are here from that. I speculate super hardcore. When he says things like 4-man raids, 8-man raids, I'm looking at Greg Street. I'm trying to read his eyebrows, read his eyes. See if when he says 8-man, his eyes open a little bit wider. See if there's like something a little bit deeper so I can extrapolate and just wring out a little bit of information from this. I'm a psychopath and I need help.
like 500 man raids. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, right?
I think it was 30 or 40. Yeah,
it was like 30 or 40 that all had to like really be on it, right? So when you have a game that, you know, some people want that big gaming experience where there's just a bunch of people raiding, and then some prefer to be like, hey, I'd rather just play with my 4 buddies, you know, my 3 buddies, and just we complete everything itself. What are your thoughts on that?
So as a player and as a game designer, I like big raids. I just think I love the epic feeling. Like there's no other experience like that in video games. Like even in a battle royale, you may start with 100 people, but it's, you know, it gets whittled down really quickly.
Right.
I recognize there are problems, and I'll talk about those in a minute, but you could do so many cool things. Like you can just kill off party members. That's really hard to do when you have 5. Like as soon as you kill off 1 party member, you've lost 20% of your power. And
I want to do that boss
fight.
That's
hard. And you probably lost your
I want to sacrifice you guys.
Like that. Whereas if you have 4 tanks and you kill a couple, well, the group can keep going. And so you just have more versatility as a designer making an interesting fight. Now, I recognize some players like smaller groups. Some players want to play with their friends, and their friend group is 5 or 8, and it's not 40. When you get those really, really big raid sizes, there's almost always some dead weight, you know, and it's hard to be super brutal about like, well, your you know, your SO is playing with us and they're not really holding up their end of the bargain, so they're out. You know, that's so I feel like the right answer is just to have a variety, have smaller groups,
or sacrificing MTJ.
Groups. You know, Destiny does that.
First tank
WoW
for sacrificing is him.
Is doing that. So that's probably the smart thing to do as a developer. But as a player, you know, I usually pick the, you know, what's the most epic.
Right. I do want to talk to you about monetization, but before I ask that question, what do you think separates games like WoW and Final Fantasy 14 from the others that just don't make it? Like, what is it about them? I mean, is it just the budget? Is it the creative design that's behind it? Is it the team that's running it? I mean, it could be multiple things. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're right that budget is part of it. Like, again, thinking of rating, it's a spectacle. And in Final Fantasy, when a boss comes down and like maybe the guitar kicks in or something, like they don't mind making like custom music for boss fights and stuff like that. Like it is something amazing to see. And you can make a really, really fun encounter.
We're going to be playing the Riot MMO. And we're just like, yeah, the boss is down. The boss is dead. Imagine Dragons is going to just start kicking off in the background. Like, fucking BTS is going to walk on. KDA is going to be like drop down from this like ceiling. Oh, shit.
Counter that's pretty much just like a big ogre dude hitting you, but it's just not the same epic scale. It's not the sense of like, this is something. But yeah, budget's part of it. I also think the bigger games, and maybe the ones with the bigger budget, are just better at serving a broader audience. So say you make an MMO and you're like, hey, this MMO is PvP only because we think we can just make a.
Can you imagine like the KDA like concerts in game?
You probably guess there are going to be players that are like, I'm out.
Yeah, like
Final Fantasy has a
ETC
great
from
like,
WoW.
crafting game.
You're going to see KDA. You're going to see the other bands that like forget the like metal band. You'll see them in there.
It serves players a lot of really different motivations.
Right. I don't know if you can answer this, but do you feel comfortable with the budget that you have for the Riot MMO?
Oh, that's actually a really interesting question. I think I can answer it. One of the nice things about Riot is we're not going to run out of money, right? I'm not going to have a publisher that's like, hey, if you got to ship by Christmas or we're canceled. Riot will cancel this game if the game isn't good enough. They're not going to cancel the game because it gets too expensive. And those go hand in hand. We could make a very expensive bad game and then I would get fired. We could make a less expensive game that still really captures hearts and minds, but it's not a blank check, right? Like I have to prove, and the team has to prove that whatever Riot is putting into it is worth it. Because they could spend the money somewhere else. They could make a different game. They could double down on Valorant or something. So it's definitely not a blank check, but it's also not like we're not a startup where, oh gosh, we're out of money. What are we going to do? You know, I can always go back and ask for more. Whether or not I get more is going to depend a lot on.
Riot MMO has as much money as they need to make a good game. Ashes of Creation has money coming from a pyramid scheme salesman. Mic drop.
What they think how does the game look? What do playtesters say? How are we doing, about hitting our milestones? So that is how, in the very simplest sense, you can think of it as You get some money. If you spend it well, they're going to give you more. If you don't spend it well, you probably don't. And in our case, rather than shipping the bad game, it would just get shit canned.
That's awesome. That distinction, I think, is massive. Not only from your perspective, but especially from the consumer's perspective. Like, just knowing that, hey, this MMO that's coming out, money isn't the issue. They'll cancel it if it's not good. I would have a lot of respect for a company that, you know, would cancel a game because of that, rather than the actual money that's going into it. That's really, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. The disappointment from players, and I understand there'd be disappointment. I'd be disappointed. But that's coming from, oh, I had such high hopes for this game, and I'm disappointed that it didn't get there. And
that's
they
bullshit.
They don't want a bad game. They don't want us to like ship the game no matter what. They want a good game.
Anyone who fights for any one particular thing, and this carries over into real life too, and thinks that everything that's not that one thing is bad, is an idiot. I want a fun MMO to play. I want a fun game to play. I don't give a fuck who makes it. I just want to have fun. I don't care who makes it. I just do not care at all. 0%. Make me something fun. And I believe Riot's probably a little bit better than the Ashes of Creation team with their lack of experience.
And that's,
absolutely,
you know, we can't deliver a good game. What are we doing?
So one of the things that the game does need to do is it needs to generate revenue. Okay, so I'd love to get your thoughts on a sub-based model versus a free-to-play model.
They, you know, the truth is they're both viable. What you generally get in a sub-based model is fewer players, because fewer players can afford it, but are a very steady revenue stream. So you might say, I would rather 1 million players who pay me $15 a month regularly than 5 million players who sometimes pay and sometimes don't. That's just, you know, that's just the economics of it. So generally, if you want to go free to play, it's because you think you can have a lot of players and you'll be okay, even if they don't individually spend a lot of money. You'll have a lot of players who spend nothing. You'll have some players who spend more, but on average, you're assuming they're not going to pay that much, and you make up for it with size. And you see that a lot of mobile games, not just mobile MMOs, but mobile games in general, assume that they don't have very long a lifespan, so they need to like make money right away, you know, big audience right away, because then people are gonna drop them and move on to the next thing. It's also interesting that in China, a little less so Korea, but still more so I think than in the West, the notion of pay for power is not as,
I think battle pass is a good option too, like with a cosmetic battle pass.
It comes to them as like, well, that's not fair.
I really like the battle pass idea, and I think he actually brings it up here.
Gear than me when they just spent money on it.
Right.
But at least to a Chinese mindset, sometimes they're thinking, well, I don't want to spend a lot of time grinding to get this item. Why can't I just pay you to get it right away and get to the good stuff? Maybe I just want to raid. Let me skip to the good stuff. Particularly, this was more true in both Korea and China, when a lot of gamers had to play
$10 battle pass every other month or something.
Then they're literally paying for the hour.
Right.
So rather than paying per hour to get 100 hours to get a sword, let me just buy the sword and skip all that stuff. So we're not going to do pay to win. We're not going to do pay to power. I'm pretty confident saying that.
I already reacted to that, but you guys know how I feel about that. He basically confirms no pay to win, no pay to power. How deep down that rabbit hole do we want to go? Can you buy a cosmetic? Can you sell that cosmetic for gold on the auction house and then use that gold to buy armor in the game? I don't know. I mean that's buy to power with extra steps, right? I think given what he said, they're not going to do that. I really don't think they're going to do that. It's one of the biggest reasons Lost Ark just failed in the West, at least. And he did recognize the fact that in Eastern markets they like that. I don't think that carried over in Lost Ark to the Western market. So he recognized it, he commented on it, and he said it's not going to be pay to win. So that's we can't really ask for more than that.
That's a big one.
Yeah, League of Legends even has a battle pass. Like I think
it's just not Riot's style.
Right.
We really
I think the future of MMOs is going to see more battle passes.
At any time. And yeah, if life is rough right now and you're between jobs or you just can't, you can't pay for the subscription, I'd rather them not churn out rather than be able to keep playing. So That's why Riot has traditionally liked
I like his
free-to-play
view on
purely
monetization.
cosmetic
It seems
purchases.
good.
But again,
It seems like it's
that
not
based in a
enough, though,
gameplay perspective
because
too.
an MMO, again, I'm very ignorant to the game development and the budget side of things when it comes to MMO, but I would imagine that it's very expensive to maintain and run and create an MMORPG. Is it
probably
feasible?
The most expensive kind of game to make.
Right? I would think
Yeah.
so.
Only other thing close is like huge open world, you know,
Right.
Horizon Zero Dawn, Assassin's Creed, Red Dead Redemption style. Those are also very expensive.
I don't even consider
an
those
MMO
games
needs
anymore. They're
everything.
like
It
full
needs matchmaking. It
entertainment
needs a
experiences.
chat system. It needs, you know, a gear system. It just every system you can imagine. So yeah, they are very expensive to build, and if it's a super content heavy game, they're also very expensive to run.
Absolutely.
If it's a more PvP based game or a more sandbox game, it's less expensive to run because players are providing a lot of the content.
Right,
you need to get yourself one of these 99-cent composition book.
Like
I'm gonna show you real fast. There's notes. There's notes.
Sustain with a free-to-play model that
Get
just
one of those on your desk.
monetizes
Best thing I ever did.
Cosmetics. Honestly, because like for me,
That and taking
I'm thinking
notes.
like no. Like for me, on like technically, theoretically, yes. Obviously, if everyone is buying these costumes and stuff, yeah, sure. I know for a fact it would be, but like realistically, I feel like the answer to that is no. What would you say?
No, we've done the math, and I think there is a world that works out. Like,
really,
you can have enough players who are willing to pay enough on cosmetics to fund a really big game.
Really, like how often would you expect, in order for that to work? How often?
Of course, they've done the math.
To have
League
to,
of
like,
Legends,
new cosmetics.
Valorant.
So obviously, you can't release one new
Legends
cosmetic
of
a year
Runeterra.
to be able to, right? Like no one's gonna buy, right?
It works for all their games.
And I also
It's
know
different in
from
an
experience
MMO,
that players
but
resent
it
when they
works.
feel like you're spending too much development effort on cosmetics. Like, to look at League of Legends, for example, if we stopped making champions and just kept making skins, at some point players are like, well, this kind of sucks. You're only focused on the money-making side of the game. So you need to do both. You need to make sure the game balance is good. You need to update everything that you can in order for players to feel good about it. So, yeah, again, we don't even know for sure exactly what our business model is going to be, but I've done the math enough to convince myself that if we said, yeah, can you launch a game with just cosmetics? Probably you can.
Okay.
You have every card, but do you have every cosmetic?
You just stated, as far as the Riot MMO goes, there's no confirmation. There's none of that. But for you personally,
He's specifically talking about like funding a game based off of cosmetics alone.
Do you personally prefer to play a sub-to-play game or a free-to-play game that
The
has an in-game cash?
The one thing that bothers me about a sub is kind of the guilt of I'm paying for this game and I'm not playing it right now. And so for a game like World of Warcraft, I came back and played the last expansion. And then when I stopped playing, I felt like, well, the right thing to do is to cancel my subscription.
Right.
Not like
But then if I want to jump in and play one night, well, am I going to start my subscription up again? Like, there's a little bit of friction there to really fitting in how I play. Whereas, like, if I want to play Valorant, I'll just pick up Valorant. If I want to put Valorant down for 6 months and pick it up again.
I do think subs, though, if you get, I don't know, like a free subscription to your favorite streamer by subscribing to Amazon Prime, I think that's really awesome.
And, great, I'll do that. Now, yeah, there are battle passes and things like that can be subscription-like. But overall, I think that's the one flaw in the subscription model is, as a player, you feel like the right thing to do is to turn it on and off all the time.
Right.
Kind of a habit.
Right. What do you think about the games that are free to play but have like a subscription option where you get bonus stuff like extra
This is where he talks about battle passes,
percentage, extra experience, a lot of games do that. Like BDO does it, even Lost Ark does it to a certain extent. What do you think about that model?
I think as a player, I think that's pretty cool because it gives you the option to kind of pay how you want. If you're like, hey, I'm not ready to commit money to this game, awesome. But if you're like, no, I'm in, I know I'm going to spend lots and lots of hours in this game. I don't mind, spending a little more for a better experience. I think that's pretty cool. It is, again, like I said before, with the pay for power, it's a slippery slope, and you can easily turn off players if you're too heavy-handed with that.
Right. Now, I have always personally preferred sandbox games until I started playing Lost Ark. And maybe it comes with age too, but I'm starting to enjoy these theme park games. But sandbox games have always been very fun for me
too.
because
RuneScape
of
does a really good job in my opinion.
entertainment that comes with player-driven content. That and the fact that I'm a big PvP guy. Lost Ark is a PvE game. Lost Ark really has turned me on to the PvE side.
What is it,
However,
Mr. Parpal?
you know, the player-driven content versus design content. What are your thoughts and opinions and preferences for that?
I mean, as a player, I play both kinds. It's a different experience. I think the theme park sometimes gets derided as being,
damn it, dude.
I don't know, old-fashioned or boring. But some of those best experiences, like I was talking about, when a boss in Final Fantasy drops and the music changes, like that's a theme park and it's epic, and I love it. You know, I'm there.
A couple drops in there.
That's great. The novelty part, and novelty is kind of a funny word, but we think about it as, when I talk to my friends the next day, what am I going to say? And maybe I'll say like, hey, did you see that episode of you know, Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or whatever last night? Did you see when that boss
Did you actually not know Prime gave that?
That's very fleeting.
Hell yeah, my advertisement worked.
There and gone.
Right.
In a PvP game,
everyone's like, I want to hear that again though. I got excited because of a sub, but I want to hear about the sandbox. When I talk to my friends the next day, what am I going to say? And maybe I'll say like, hey, did you see that episode of you know, Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or whatever last night? Did you see when that boss dropped? That was so epic. That's very fleeting because the moment's kind of there and gone.
Right.
In a PvP game, those stories can kind of go on forever because it's, hey, you'll never guess what happened. I was in this game last night and I thought we were going to lose, and then this guy showed up and this crazy thing happened. And the stories are really about the other players. And you frame it in terms of the game, but the stories are not. The developers wanted me to experience this XYZ, so that's what I experienced.
Right.
So that's why I have a slight preference towards more novelty as a player, and the way you get that is often other players. And PvP is the most glaring example of that because you need a lot less content in a PvP game. Like League of Legends doesn't have a story. It doesn't have a campaign. It doesn't need it. The story is you and your team went up against this other team.
Quick question on that note. Classic WoW is very different from retail WoW, right? Obviously.
My ho just subscribed.
God fucking damn it, dude. One sec. Let these play out. Stop it. I like his take on the sandbox versus theme park thing. I think they're like we've already discussed this extensively on the Discord. And
just subscribed.
I think we've kind of agreed, and from what we've heard from him, it's like theme box sand park. I have a hard time saying that every single time, but I think they're looking at something kind of in between, a little balance of the two. I don't think it's going to be like full theme park like Lost Ark is. Or like on rails experience, quote unquote. And I definitely don't think it's going to be like a sandbox like Star Wars Galaxies is, but it'll be content. There'll be things, but I think there will be repeatable content, whether it's in the form of like a Mythic Plus type thing or something more that's just never been done before, some kind of something new and a little more fresh. But I think there will be a ton of like repeatable content, but it won't be like, I think it'll have like diminishing returns. Fishing is confirmed. He's confirmed fishing multiple times. We're going to have fishing. I actually need to do a new everything we know about the Riot MMO video soon. And I'm so happy this video came out because I'm going to release it in like December 10th-ish. But yeah, let's get back to the video. Subs are over. Thanks for the subs. Everyone, welcome to the channel. If you are a sub, you've got some cool emotes. Make sure you use them. We like to throw them around. And when you do, they pop up on the screen. So there you go.
If you had to choose, do you prefer the classic WoW experience or the retail WoW experience? Not like the nostalgia. Classic WoW is a lot.
Nostalgia, Cannon. Come on.
More sandboxy compared to retail WoW, comparatively speaking, right? Like which of the two
I think they're on the 9th
prefer?
Or 10th.
No, I agree with that.
There'd be 4. I'm going to do the video after. My
criticism of, I don't want to bash on Blizzard. I love Blizzard. I have a lot of friends there. My criticism of the Shadowlands expansion I came back for was a lot of it felt like I was playing a single player game in a chat window. Like I was still chatting with my friends, but we weren't doing stuff together. The campaign is mostly a single player experience, and having your friends play it with you is often kind of challenging because you're in different parts of the story or whatever.
Yeah, give me a couple days to edit the
dungeons
video.
and raiding were wonderful in Shadowlands, and I really enjoyed that. And again, that's like why I play the game, but it has much more of that. It's not quite a sandbox, but it is a little bit in how you approach the different bosses. It's like, oh, we need someone to sheep this boss. We don't have a mage. What are we going to do? How are we going to solve this?
Right, right.
That kind of thing. That's really, again, that problem solving is really fun for me. So you get some of that novelty back in challenging content.
Gotcha. So factions are another big thing with MMOs. You have games like...
That's the second time he's referenced non-action based problem solving. So not just throwing everything you have at the boss and just seeing if you can DPS it down faster to kill it. He's talking about stepping away and problem solving away from the actual combat itself. I'm curious how that plays out in the MMO. It's the second time he's referenced it in just this, though. He's a big fan of like problem solving outside of the actual problem itself, I guess.
WoW, where it's literally faction versus faction. Ion did it as well with a third faction. What are your thoughts and preferences when it comes to faction versus no faction?
I mean, again, there are strengths and weaknesses of both approach, and
Absolutely.
I don't think you could just say there's a right and the wrong. Like, what you get out of factions is a great story because you know who the bad guy is, you know who the enemy is. Like, I hate those guys, let's go kill them.
Right.
That is baked right in, and it's awesome. And that, just like with any sport, you root for your team. You get that sense of tribality, I guess. So that is what factions get you. What they miss is, say you and I want to play a new MMO together and you're like, oh, I picked these guys. I'm like, well, shit, I picked the other guys. I guess we'll never play together because now we're in different factions. Like, that's the big downside. And it's hard to get around it without watering down the story that brought you there in the first place.
Right. Do you have a personal preference if you had to choose? Like, if you were going to play a game?
I play games, maybe a lot of people play games this way. I kind of play games with my friend group, so a faction doesn't really hurt us that much because we'll talk ahead of time about, hey, what are we going to do? Even like my WoW guild, they're like, hey, we
he's not confirming nor denying factions.
That discussion happened. So factions don't have that flaw for me that they might for some.
Moving on. Progression. Now, this is a big one for me. And Lost Ark, in my opinion, one of the biggest downsides to Lost Ark is the daily grind. And they call it homework. Like, literally, that's the term we use. We call it homework. Those start adding up. And it's a very alt-focused game, which is another thing that I want to talk to you about after this. But it's a grind. Nobody likes it. Right? Nobody likes doing it, in the West at least. But at the same time, how do you make a game, an MMO, not repetitive? You do need to give tasks for players to do every day to log into the game and feel that progression so that when they do get progress, they feel rewarded, right?
I think the biggest lesson we've learned from World of Warcraft Classic is that factions are kind of a dated system that shouldn't be implemented in MMOs. Faction imbalance is going to happen every single time, and people will transfer it all to one faction, at least in a PvP environment. So I think soft factions where you can communicate with each other and team with each other and do everything with other people, and you can that's like your faction, maybe more for your single player game or your single player aspects of the MMO. But I don't think factions and locking people out of playing with their friends and doing stuff like that, I think that's a dated system that we just probably will not see in the future. I could be wrong.
Needs to be that grind to a certain degree. I would love to hear your thoughts on MMORPG progression, and let's start with that dailies and the day-to-day content. Your thoughts?
So MMOs, dailies, RPGs, I think in general need progression. I know there are people out there that say, oh, you could have a very flat game and it'll work. I think, I like to get more powerful. I like to get new weapons and spells or whatever. So I think progression is important. It is a very delicate tuning point because if players progress too quickly, they kind of run out of stuff to do. They're like, okay, I'm done. And if they progress too slowly, it's frustrating. It's like, you play for 1,000 hours and you get, 5 more hit points. Like that feels pretty crap.
It's terrible.
So the tuning is really important, and you want to make sure that you can progress at a rate that you feel without running out of stuff to do too quickly. So dailies, wow, I remember. So in World of Warcraft, we added more dailies because players said, hey, I have nothing to do. I like raiding. I raid with my guild once or twice a week. What am I supposed to do the rest of the time? Originally, it was, go farm flasks and other types of consumables. And over time, that changed to, well, here are some quests you can do or grinding or whatever because you want to get X amount of currency every day to kind of players said they wanted to play the game more. And so that's the kind of inexpensive way from a developer standpoint. You know, I'm sure players would love to have a new raid, but raids are expensive. They're
absolutely.
hard things to do. So while you're waiting for the new raid, here, have some dailies, have some, you know, currency, have some grinding. I think the better games offer you choices, which are, again, it's hard to tune, because if you say, look, you could PvP for an hour or you could do quests for 10 minutes, well, everyone will pick the quest. But if you could tune it right to where people can do what they enjoy doing, or even change it up, like, oh, I'm so burned out of killing wolves, I'm going to go PvP instead. Like, that's the sweet spot. And I think that's what, as a player, you know, and as a developer, that's what I enjoy, when the tuning is good so that you can kind of do lots of different things and be okay.
Right. And you're right. It just sucks because, like, if it gets to the point where it's like, I have to do 20 dailies a day or I'm behind, that really sucks. Feeling
and I'm going to let my friends down because, you know, they're depending on me. I'm the healer, I'm the tank, whatever. And now that guilt sucks.
I think he confirmed dailies. I mean, obviously nothing's a full confirmation because there's definitely going to be changes later on, right? But he did say he thinks dailies are, in a sense, good, but giving players choices on what they could do for those dailies. So say if you could do 3 dailies a day, this is actually, this is what Lost Ark does, and Lost Ark sucks. You can choose the 3 dailies you want to do, and you can do PvP dailies, or you can do this kind of daily or whatever. Although Guild Wars 2 does that, and I actually like it in Guild Wars 2. It doesn't feel like a chore. It feels different. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, you see. I think there's a little bit of a slight delay. But yeah, you know. Yeah.
It's funny because that we were talking about earlier about smoothing off the rough edges of games. The way most people played EverQuest was you would go out and you'd do some quests, and then you'd run out of quests, and then you'd go grind on some wolves or whatever. And one of WoW's big innovations was, hey, you're never gonna reach that point where you have to go grind. Like, when you finish the quest, there's gonna be another quest and then another quest. And WoW let you go not only from 0 to 60 just doing quests, but having options like, oh, I
always finish my Guild Wars 2 dailies in one SPVP
and that was
match.
kind of their big innovation.
As long as you win the match,
filled in the grind. But then,
and then I would end up doing like 45 after that.
Almost become a different kind of grind that you log in every day. I don't love logging into games every day. You know, sometimes I don't want to play a game. I want to watch TV. Sometimes.
Casual, Greg, you fucking casual. I don't like logging into games every day. Come on. I want to have to. I want to fall asleep and I want to wake up in the morning. I want to wake up early. Because I want to grind. Come on. What a casual. Game's canceled. Riot's done. I'm quitting content creation.
I want to go out with my friends. It feels mean when you're like requiring people to log in every single day without fail or they fall behind. Logging in every few days or maybe once a week, that I can commit to. For a game I love, I don't mind playing once a week.
One of the things that I feel like Lost Ark does do well, this doesn't excuse all the dailies in my opinion, but they do have rest bonus that you can.
I'm not going to read too far into him saying how much he wants to play. I'm mostly tongue in cheek when I'm joking about it. He's already fully confirmed that the game is large and there will be things to do. That's a quote. There will always be things to do. So.
And like you get like double the loot. I feel like that's a pretty good system to really kind of take a break, right? What are your thoughts on alts? Because I'm personally not a big fan of alts. Yet I'm playing a game that revolves around having a lot of alts. But I hated alts. I'm very much a one-character person. One of the things I really liked about Final Fantasy
one trick
is that I could play other classes but still play my character, if that makes sense, rather than, hey, you know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts on alts in MMOs?
Yeah, my opinions have changed a little bit over time there. When I started playing MMOs, I thought like everyone should have a main, and alts like it's almost like a failure in the game if someone has an alt, because like my friend Andy, he's a hunter, and I just want to know that Andy's a hunter. It's a role-playing game, right? We're each going to play a role. I'm a warrior, he's a hunter.
What do you guys think
about
alts?
And then when he starts playing his mage instead,
I'm trying to think what I think.
That's weird. You're a hunter. I don't like to think of you as both people. I want to know that when you're on, you're a hunter. And then my thinking shifted a little bit because you know, I mentioned before the thought of novelty. I have every class
in Guild Wars 2 at 80.
Hardly anything in a game
3 level 80 thieves.
Playing a different class. It's like, I have to think about things differently. I have a different rotation. I care about different stats, different drops. I do different things in fighting. So there is a lot of value in that. So I think the sweet spot again comes down to, is playing an alt like restarting the game from scratch, or at the opposite extreme is playing an alt just kind of a cosmetic change because like if you don't actually need to run additional dungeons to get gears for your alt, like why have an alt, right? You're just that's basically just, oh, I want to look like an elf instead of a dwarf or something.
Right.
Because
do you like how Final Fantasy has done it?
I think it's a clever solution in that, and I assume your viewers all know, but Final Fantasy lets you just have one character who could be lots of different classes, but only one at a time, and you just kind of switch.
Right.
It's really cool because if you like your character, you don't have to switch. You're like, I can do anything with this character. The bummer is if a new like race or something comes out, you don't get a different experience. You can't say, what is I can't remember the name of the Drakthir, the new dragon people in the new WoW expansion. Like they come out, and you're like, well, I don't need them because my one character can already do it all.
Right.
And because what I really like about MMOs is the social aspect.
I don't think alts should be required. I don't think there should be any bonus to your account or any gold farming abilities by having an alt, but I think alts can be fun to play. And if you want to make an alt, you can do that. But I don't think it should be required on any level. I don't think there should be a requirement for it, like there is in Lost Ark. Should be allowed. I think you can say like, you know what, I kind of disagree with Greg here too, where he was saying like, oh, it seems like that person they're not as good or whatever. I always had respect. Like we had our main tank who also on the weekends would play a mage. And I respected him because it was impressive. You know, he got really, really good at both of them. And I think that's cool. I don't want one character. I want all classes. I agree. I think that sums it up pretty good in one sentence. I hate when you switch to an alt, but you cannot teleport to a certain location to complete the con. Yeah, and have a lot of account bound stuff. Guild Wars 2, once again, does a really good job of this. Allow you to transfer some stuff, some armor, some weapons to your alts. Mess things around. If you want to switch characters, do it. But like also don't make it a requirement on any level. Account wide daily quests. Boom, roasted.
Aspect and playing with friends, it kind of turns me off when someone is, well, I can solve any problem with alts. And to give you an example, when I started playing World of Warcraft, like you need to find an enchanter. Like you want something enchanted, go find an enchanter. You want someone to pick a lock, go find a rogue who can lock pick.
Right.
What it turned into is everyone had an enchanter. It's like, well, I have an alt as an enchanter. I'll just enchant my own stuff. I don't need other players. I'm like a one-man army. And so that kind of bums me out a little bit because I really love the player interactions. And I think, you know, with the player economy and BDO did a really good job of that. Like, you need other players. You can't just solve it all yourself.
I feel like that's something that Vanilla Arcade and Albion did very well. You have certain people that can craft certain things, and within that, it needs certain things, and that requires different professions and stuff like that. And it just became, I'm looking for a carpenter, or I'm looking for someone that can make weapons or something like that. And that definitely enhanced my experience as a player in the game for sure. I get what you're saying. Definitely.
And I think there are ways to have alts that don't let you kind of be the one-man army, and maybe, you know, maybe their games will figure out ways to do that.
Right. Okay. So moving on, as far as the progression goes, your thoughts on horizontal versus vertical progress.
I didn't see any like confirmation or denial around alts or how classes or different things like that. I think there's going to be limitations, but I didn't really hear anything like that was like a good section of him actually just talking about his own personal stuff and personal experiences. There was no like, I don't think any of that has anything to do with the MMO. I took zero notes for that section on alting.
In MMOs.
I think you need both. Like, I don't tend to stick with games that are just horizontal because I like to get more powerful. That's kind of you know, I came into digital role-playing games from Dungeons and Dragons and physical role-playing games. So that's just what I think about a game is, you know, you get more powerful, you get better spells, you get a better weapon. I do like having some amount of horizontal progression because it just, I mean, the crappy way to say it is it gives you another bar to fill up. And like, if you're stuck on one thing, you can go work on something else.
Right.
Really smart games like Civilization have that, I want to play one more turn feel, because you're almost about to finish something. And even if like one goal is really, really far away, you turn around, another goal is really close. And then by the time you finish that goal, the other goal isn't that far away as it used to be.
Right.
And so, you know, you can see where that's going. So I think clever horizontal progression does that.
Right.
It also kind of lets players do what they want. Like someone who says, well, I like raiding okay, but it's not my main thing. What I really like to do is, be a blacksmith and make armor and weapons for other players. Like it gives them a way to kind of focus on that without it just being.
I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm watching my stream.
The DPS go up.
What about obtaining and enhancing gear? You've got games like Lost Ark and BDO where you don't get drops with weapons in your gear for the most part. You just enhance it. And it's like the higher you go, the less the percentage it is. And then it's just like, hey, I've got a 0.01% chance for this to go versus doing this epic raid boss and then getting the drop and being the lucky one to get the drop. And it's like, well, if you think about your odds of getting mythic item, whatever the highest grade is in a big raid, it's kind of works out to be the same thing. It's just packaged differently. What are your thoughts and preferences?
I mean, again, I hate to keep going as an answer, but the reason these problems aren't solved is because there's pros and cons, right?
Absolutely.
I love the moment of like killing the dragon, opening up the chest and like seeing what's inside. It's lame if it's just a bunch of crafting materials. It's cool if it's like, oh, it's a magic sword. That's awesome.
It is.
On the other hand, when you think about the fantasy of a lot of these characters, King Arthur had Excalibur and Aragorn has Anduril. It's not like Aragorn killed an orc and the orc dropped a better sword, so he vendors Anduril and now he has a new sword. That feels weird. So I get the idea that like, no, this is my sword and I'm just going to focus on making it better and better. I'm not going to throw it aside just because an axe fell out.
Right,
so there's different ways to do it. A game like Diablo, Path of Exile, they're very based on disposable.
I don't even know if that's a hot take. That just seems like,
and you're constantly going to get gear.
I kind of
you're
like
never going to get that feeling of like,
army, but
this
still.
is my sword, because you're going to go through it a lot.
Right. Personally, you don't have a preference. Like there's obviously pros and cons to both. Yeah.
There's pros and cons to both. I think some games do one style better than others.
From a player's perspective, do you think it's a little bit more off-putting with the whole enhancement?
I can't wait till we can
if
start playing
like
games on stream.
If you literally have to win the lottery
drinking
to get
nights.
an item, it's like, oh, there's a 1 in a million chance of this item dropping. That's pretty brutal. Yeah. On the other hand, winning the lottery is awesome. And if you do get a sword and you're like, only 1 in a million players have this sword, you feel like a badass, even though it was just random, right? It's just luck that you got it, but that's something special. And I think we've almost lost something in games now that players have the expectation of, I'm gonna finish my gear. I'm gonna look at what the best in slot items are. I'm gonna acquire them all, and that's kind of my journey, because then you never will have that moment of nobody else has this weapon. Like I'm the only one that has this weapon, and people are gonna see me in town and be like, dude, I can't believe you got that. Because if you want that to be the case, then like 0.01 chance of something dropping is like way too high. It has to be like 0.0000, or thousands of players are going to get it on the first day.
It's one of those things where it's like the harder an item is to get, it is off-putting because people don't get it. But if you are one of the few that get it, that's like, I mean, everyone wants to show off, right? Show how big their stuff is, right? Like when it comes to an MMO, like, look at me. Like everyone wants that.
But I think it's off-putting because the games give us the expectation that, you are able to get that.
I don't have a good solution for that, honestly.
I think one of the most brilliant things that the Battle Royale games do is when you know there's 100 players, you know your chance of being the last player is really rare. Like 99 other players have to screw up for you to be that last player. So you go in with the expectation that you probably won't get it. And then when you do get it, and most people get it eventually, like it feels amazing. And you like tell all your friends, and like chicken dinner, whatever, is great.
Chicken dinner, whatever.
And I wish we could get MMOs back to that point of, I don't expect to get a new item, so when I do, it feels wonderful.
That much better.
Yeah,
that much better.
But it's hard. It's hard. No one wants to go raid, kill a dragon.
So you do like having certain items, like let's just use that as an example, the Sword of 1,000 Truths, like that in a game, like that mysterious weapon or item that it could be in the form of a mount even too. Like you like having.
Invincible in World of Warcraft is like that, super rare, and so people were so excited when they saw it, and they would show it off.
Last thing in regards to progression, I just want this will be a quick one, but one of the biggest turnoffs that I've had with BDO, and to this day I don't know why they have it, breaking and downgrading gear, backwards progression. I personally hate it. I really hope that's not in the Riot MMO. Your thoughts on backwards progression?
At Riot, we talk a lot about high highs and low lows, right? And PvP games tend to have high highs and low lows. And a low low is like, wow, this sucks. Like, I didn't just get beat, I got crushed. I got annihilated. And it feels weird to say that you want that in a game, but it matters, because if you got annihilated, some other player is like,
feeling great.
I feel great. I got a pentakill, whatever. So I think there's some advantage to having low lows, having like durability on gear, or having it break, or you have a chance to improve it and actually downgrades. I don't know that that's enough to make the good moments feel good. It just kind of feels crappy. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, thank God.
The last two sections I want to talk to you about is the classes and PvP. But as far as the classes go, you mentioned that classes in Lost Ark really stand out. What are your thoughts on classes in general for MMOs?
It depends a lot on what the design is. Like, in World of Warcraft, adding a new class was very expensive.
I had a minute panic attack right there.
Class-specific armor. So when you add a new class now that every raid tier needs to have like armor for this character. But it wasn't just armor, it was you have to make sure there's room in the raid to like bring this new class, because if you're bringing, the Death Knight, that may be one less spot for the Paladin or something. So you have to think about stuff like that. You could make a system where adding classes is relatively cheap, but that would have to mean that each class is less distinct, right? Like, you probably don't have a whole talent tree or something like that. You probably can't have a lot of unique art, because that
you can't have winners without losers.
There's just only so many hours a day you can make art, and if you're making lots of different armor for different classes, you're just gonna have fewer classes by definition.
Let's say an MMO is out, right? Like, it's up and running.
That's why it's good to have, like, I don't know, 6 to 8 classes.
When it comes to the budget of it and the time investment of releasing a new class, what would you say is a good pace?
About 2 subclasses per
release for an MMO that's active and has a pretty good budget.
When we try to think of the way to answer this. I think in general, you can add more classes earlier in the life cycle of the game and then slow it down. And that's kind of what we've done with League of Legends, is we used to add new champions pretty quickly, and now it's only a few a year. Again, it depends on what you're trying to solve. Are you trying to add novelty to players because they're kind of bored with their class, they want to see something new? Are you trying to monetize because you're selling the classes, and so you need the player base to buy this new class? How much are you going to throw game balance off? Like, sometimes players don't want you to screw up the game balance constantly. They're like, hey, the game is in a pretty good state.
Right.
We don't need it to get thrown off.
Your thoughts on locking classes to certain races, factions, and sex?
No, he doesn't like that.
In general,
he doesn't like that. He's already stated it. Cannon, my friend, hey, you watched my YouTube videos. Have you sunken down to the deep depths of my YouTube videos and my thought process with Twitter? Have you done this? Cannon, I have the answers.
Players choose what their character looks like because they like the way that character looks.
Yeah.
And once you lock them out of something, it's harder for you just lose that option. Like gnomes in World of Warcraft, they're a little cute race. Some people love gnomes, and if they want to play a gnome, they want to play a gnome. They don't want to feel like they're supposed to play the gnome because, let's say, gnomes are the best rogues in the game because of stat bonuses or because of something like that.
Racials and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I generally say let players look like whatever they want to look like, and then put all the mechanics on the class. Like, if I was making World of Warcraft today, I would probably say any race could be any class, and there's no racial bonuses, because it should just be a preference. You like Tauren? Great. Tauren.
I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the biggest turnoffs I had personally had with World of Warcraft. I did play a little bit of Shadowlands.
If I was redesigning WoW from scratch, there would be no racials. The choice should be about look and lore, not power.
One of the biggest gripes that I had was, number one, all my friends played Horde, so now I have to choose a race that's on Horde. And then when of those classes, on top of that, I had to choose a class that had the racial passive that I wanted to play for PvP, because I was a PvP guy. And I was kind of like, oh my, and everyone's like, oh, if you're Alliance, you gotta go human, or you know what I mean, because of the stun resist or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, it was such a turnoff for me. Yeah.
But I get it. Again, coming from like the Dungeons and Dragons roots, you just expect, oh, I'm an elf, I should be better at some things than a human, Or
I know that's where it came from. You can really just do whatever you want.
In terms of where we are with video games, like, just let people look like whatever they want to look like, and don't worry about it.
Right. So as far as letting people look like what they want to look like, I will also say, like, I don't know, like if I'm gonna play a human, I'd rather be able to customize my character to really make it look like how I like it, how I prefer it to look like. And I know there's plenty of people that literally
I think racials make sense in D&D, but
really customizing
given the way that people min-max things nowadays, there's gonna be a best race. If there's power attached to the race, there's gonna be a best race. If you want to play a rogue, you have to play this race, and that kind of sucks. But yeah, no, it works in D&D or things like that where you're trying to really get down into the role play aspect of it. It sucks as a PvPer though. It's really bad as a PvPer. Having to be a human, that sucked. I think it's a little bit dated though.
Even though they're never going to actually see their character's face because of a helmet or a top-down view or whatever that may be, right? What are your thoughts on games and MMOs that do have a deep customization? Is that important to you as a gamer, or do you not really care?
Your racial is that you look different.
It's not something I care a ton about. Like, I don't spend hours making my character. I understand some players that's really important. And some of the like Eastern MMOs, there's like Moonlight Blade? Like it's crazy the amount of customization you can do. It's like, I mean, people have seen, you know, in the West games that offer a lot of customization, but it's nothing like a game like Moonlight Blade, where it's like a human simulator. Like anything you could possibly imagine you can do. And people will like create K-pop stars and stuff because you can get to that level of fidelity.
Right.
And that's the player expectation. I think the downside is, do you want to spend 3 hours doing your character's eyebrows before you even like jump in the game and decide if you like it or not?
You guys saw me make my Elden Ring character yesterday.
To kind of close the subject out, a lot of that does depend on the budget, right? Because I'd imagine a game like Moonlight Blade, those games that offer that feature, that's a big budget. That is not cheap to add into the game, right?
That is big budget, yeah.
I feel like it did
like a whole team to build that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's a mobile game, like you might not be able to even see that level of fidelity. Like, yeah, you have like a really cool birthmark next to your eyelash, but no one gets close just to see it.
Exactly. All right, so the last section I want to talk to you about is the
it'll be simulated
section. If I'm going to be realistic about it, is that every
I want to
MMO,
believe, but I don't.
Even WoW, where the PvP scene is very, very big. I'd say probably the biggest PvP scene of all MMOs. Even a game like WoW, the population of PvP is somewhere between.
When was the last time Cannon played WoW? The PvP population's like dead.
1 to 10%, right? Is that a pretty big factor?
10% of your players could still be a lot of players, right? Like 10% of your players may play warriors, or even fewer than that. So it's still a lot of people. It just doesn't fit with some games. Some games want to be more story based. They want to be more cooperative. PvP does take a lot of effort to balance. Like
that's the biggest thing.
Is so easy compared to balancing PvP. The monster doesn't care if it's stunned for 6 seconds, but 6 seconds is an eternity for a player to be stunned.
Absolutely.
Yeah, PvP is very hard to get right. On World of Warcraft, we made it twice as hard for us.
Here it comes. He's going to talk about separating balance. I'm calling it right now. He's going to separate PvE and PvP balance. It's coming. Just watch.
Because we didn't want to have rules work differently for the most part. We started to get away from that at the end of my tenure, and I'm not even sure what they do today, but when I say rules work differently, like, well, this stuns a monster for 6 seconds, but a person for only 1 second, or it does less damage to players, or that kind of thing. That you give yourself at least some knobs to turn to be able to balance both systems. What really sucks is when PvP players have to just eat something because it was added for PvE, or PvE gets nerfed because of PvP. It's like, oh, well, I don't PvP at all, I just raid, but now I'm a less effective healer this week because you guys couldn't balance your PvP game. Like, that's the part as a player and a dev I really want to avoid.
I'm very much looking forward to the PvP and Riot MMO if it's added to the game. I know there's nothing confirmed about the game, but if it is added, I think I'd be very, very excited to try it out. Now, with that said, though, one of the reasons why PvP isn't as successful in Lost Ark is because of how difficult it is and the experience that you get as a new player. If you're playing against someone that knows what he's doing and you're a little bit less experienced, your experience in PvP is just getting stun locked and just dying. Like whether it's getting one shot or 2 comboed or 3 comboed, you're just going to go in there, get staggered or get stunned, and then it's over. And that's just like a bad experience for a lot of people, right? Generally speaking, like, what are your thoughts on like the combat of PvP?
Yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot of this from League of Legends and Valorant. Is players want to have some agency. It really sucks when you feel like there was nothing I could do. You want to say, you want to learn from the encounter and think about what would you do differently next time? Like, oh, well, I used my CC immunity too soon, or I should have countered with this earlier. Like, then you feel like even though you lost, you kind of know what you're going to do better next time. The reason like the stun lock to one shot feels so bad is you're like, well, what could I have done? There was nothing I could have done. I got jumped, I got stunned, I couldn't get out of it, and then I got killed before I could get out of the stun. Like, there's just no reaction there. There's nothing you can do. Right. And yeah, if you got ganked out in the open world and they were much more powerful than you, that's a little different. But if it's supposed to be a fair fight and it just came down to like who got the CC,
there's nothing
first,
you can do in world PvP.
That's not player skill, right? That's not like a back and forth. That's just.
And that's part of the fun of world PvP, but I don't think there will be
making it even more ping sensitive as well.
Extensive
ping is also
world
something
PvP
that we have to deal with in the West as well. Forgot to actually ask this earlier, and I was just reminded by this based off of our PvP talk. Tab targeting versus action combat. This is another very big discussion amongst all MMOs. What do you prefer, and what do you like seeing in MMOs? Are you an action combat guy, or are you a tab target guy? And then you have games like Guild Wars, by the way, that's like a mixture of both. What are your thoughts?
It's like a lot of my answers. There are, like you said, there's strengths and weaknesses to both. I've probably played more tab targeting games than action games. Maybe it's just because action games haven't had as much time to mature and they'll get there. But a lot of MMO combat is complicated enough that trying to like stay on the target, thinking that someone was in range when they weren't, like those are pretty frustrating moments, and they feel like you're fighting the game versus fighting the the enemy or the other player.
Right. So which game do you feel like you enjoyed the most as far as the combat goes? So like this kind of ties into
I would say that I enjoy tab targeting more. But my hope is that there is room for action combat games. Like I said, I love
not video related, but you guys in chat. I think like Wilderness and RuneScape, that kind of thing would be good. I think you can level bracket. You can even, you could even technically, from a technical perspective, ELO bracket world PvP as well, and have people within your like range. The only people you see, it's also a possibility. I don't think anyone's ever done that. It's interesting. I think the only problem with that is like, say you have a friend and you want to go play with that friend, or say you're already max level, like you said, assuming levels. You can go help your buddy go kill something or kill a boss. Like that was always fun. You're like, I can't kill this fucking quest. Like maybe my friend can come kill him for me. That'd be super nice. I loved that kind of like player interaction, which can kill that. Maybe if you allow grouping or something that can make that. And then but then you could just group in higher skilled players or higher level. There's a solution. I'm just too dumb.
Dark Souls, I love God of War. Those certainly aren't tab targeting, and they're very fun visceral combat.
Right.
Hopefully, action combat and MMOs will get to that point too, but I think it has a long way to go.
Really? Okay, interesting. Yeah. How much more expensive is it for an action combat game compared to tab targeting? I have no idea, but I would.
We got to put like Dark Souls on the bingo.
An MMO that's
somebody in the Discord.
Combat,
by the way, someone who's on the Discord. Can you start keeping like a list of ideas for the bingo? Because we're gonna make the bingo sheet a thing, and there will obviously be more of these interviews in the future and more conversations. So it'd be really cool if we could get like a bingo sheet going. That'd be really awesome. Whoever wants to tackle that, I don't know if I'm gonna do it, but if someone wants to do, that'd be cool.
Compared to tab targeting, that I could be completely off on that.
It's a good question. You'd have to. You need better server ping, you need better server responsiveness and good prediction for what's going to happen, because generally in action games your positioning, your distance to the target matter a lot. On the other hand, like shooters do pretty well. They have like very, very important, being able to get a headshot or something like that is down to the microseconds sometimes. So I think it can be done. I think ranged combat is generally easier to design than melee combat, and a lot, Destiny is largely a ranged game, but a lot of the MMOs we're talking about are fantasy, and there's an expectation of I'm going to be up close fighting someone with a sword. And so getting the melee combat to work when you have to be up close, you have to be on top of someone, the swing generally takes longer than just firing another bullet. I think those are all the challenges that Action Combat is still working on. But
Right.
you know, it's pretty good in Lost Ark. Feels pretty good in Diablo. So
Yeah, it does, but I feel like it does because it's isometric. It's top down.
right.
I feel like it's completely different if you're doing it in 3D.
It'd be so frustrating of someone like jumping around behind you, you know, in a real Action Combat game that
Right.
was over the shoulder camera. That would just be like, where'd they go? You know, you're constantly. That's the part.
It's probably me just reading into it, but he was talking about how like action combat doesn't fully work in like a third person section for an MMO on like some level. He wasn't even like bringing into mind isometric gameplay at all. Canon reminded him of that, so maybe he's, but it also could just be like him talking about gaming in general. So
I dislike the most about PvP and MMOs is the jumping around, the circling. That's not my fantasy of martial arts or sword fighting, of like someone hopping to make them more difficult to hit, right?
Gotcha. Right. Do you like, I don't know if you've watched the competitive BDO arena tournaments, but like if you watch them,
encounter mechanics, I think is what he's saying. He's, you know, that's like one of their biggest like public positions is they have 3 people who are titled encounter designers. And those 3 people all worked on World of Warcraft. So love it or hate it, you're going to be getting some influence from World of Warcraft encounters. Just going to say.
It literally looks like one of those Chinese kung fu movies where the
Warcraft does
the
encounters well,
characters
though,
have,
I think.
teleporting powers. They're just like going like this, or those Dragon Ball Z, you know, fight scenes where they're just going like this. It's actually kind of insane. Do you prefer something that's a little bit slower, a little bit more boomer friendly, or do you like that off the wall? Like you look at it, you're like, holy shit, you know, like this.
You might get something like that, but like insane. Obviously a little bit more updated.
Players can demonstrate skill, and I like, you know,
combat in Guild Wars 2 is a little.
It doesn't have to be one
funky
size fits all.
Sometimes.
Like what makes a fun PvP bout to watch is seeing extreme skill in play, and so I think it's fine if some players can pull off like ridiculous moves that not everyone else can.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing that I'll ask you, and we could just do this really quick, but it's the lore, and this is I don't know Necrit. I hope I'm saying his name correctly.
Necrit? I've heard both Necrit and Necrit.
Necrit. Okay, I apologize if you watch this video, but his videos are fantastic, and I saw you on your Twitter actually link the video, and you're like, I cannot confirm nor deny this. Right. And I've been studying a lot of the lore myself, or as much as I can, with this game, because I definitely want to cover it. I want to know everything about it. How important is it for you guys to stay true to that lore for the MMO? Is it going to be a little bit of variation, or are you guys going to be like trying to recreate that story within the MMO?
Yeah. So like, again, without giving any announcements, I could just tell you how we at Riot overall think about it, which is we want players to have that investment. And if you feel like, oh, everything's fluid, everything could change at a moment's notice, it's hard to be invested in the lore because like nothing matters, nothing has stakes. It's just going to constantly change or be retconned. So the way we think about it is there are core truths about the world, about the characters. And if you violate those, you know, that's pretty risky. So
gotcha.
Batman is a billionaire who goes out at night, you know, dressed as a bat. If you made a Batman story where he goes around killing people with a sword, people could be like, that doesn't feel like Batman. Like, what do you do here, right? But if you tell a story where you say like, hey, Batman's favorite food is lobster thermidor, and then you break that in another story, players are a lot more willing to forgive. You know, it doesn't have to be like perfect consistency. Now, there are people who want perfect consistency, and they get annoyed when there's anything that's out of sorts. But we think, for the most part, for a lot of players, they just kind of want to feel like that's true to their characters. It's like, oh, Garen would do that. That feels like something Garen would do. Or Kali behaves the way I thought she would based on watching cinematics and KDA and things like that. So that's kind of the level we try to deliver on. And, you know.
Right. When you were watching Necrit's video, were you like, oh my gosh, these guys, they're good? or was it like, what was the reaction you had?
He's been a fan of for a while, so he you know, he picks up a lot. There's things he totally gets wrong, and he'd probably be the first to admit it. Where he's like, "Oh, look, I'm going to connect the dots," and we're just like, "Nope, totally wrong." But but that's why the speculation's fun. If it was very easy to guess everything, it wouldn't be fun to talk about. Because you're like, wait, is that true? Is it, that's
At least he
that's the fun
appreciates
part.
speculation.
Right. It's funny you say that, because one of the things that I'm really curious about when it comes to the races for the Riot MMO, because like one of your races has like 20 races within it, like the hybrid, right? The hybrid race, right? Like
They talk about the Messiah,
yes,
like art,
yeah,
art animal, yeah.
yeah. Because then each one of those could be like a race, or if it's just gonna be a few. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious as to how you guys are gonna do it. Is there anything?
Because like we don't have elves and dwarves. We don't have a lot of standard fantasy races. It's honestly a very human centric IP.
Right.
A lot of the characters you see depicted are human. Like almost everyone in Arcane was human. That's just.
I'm just gonna keep saying canon. Do better.
That's just the world we made, for better or worse.
I will ask this question on behalf of the entire MMO community, but the last question I will leave you with is there anything that you can say about the Riot MMO that hasn't been shared already? Is there anything?
No.
Smallest little thing.
Is there anything?
No.
I guess I will say players have made a lot of assumptions, and
Me?
some of them are just flat out wrong, and that's been fun for us to be like, oh yeah, they think they figured this all out, and they've totally gotten it wrong. So that's been fun for us.
Has there ever been anyone that has said something that would be the equivalent of
Game of Thrones spoiler here?
Gonna be sitting on the Iron Throne at the end, like where you're like, oh my god, this guy, how did he come up with that? He's actually right. Has there been anyone that you've seen?
Say my name.
If you're talking about like the biggest, darkest secrets, crazy story twist, no, I don't think I've seen that yet.
Okay.
But they also, we haven't said much about at all what the story is.
Yeah, everything is really mysterious right now.
One of the things Riot has done is gotten players to the point where they trust us to get it right. Like we may not get it right away, and we'll make mistakes, but given enough time and feedback, we'll try to do the right thing.
Okay, so you obviously can't give us any dates in regards to anything, but would you be able to tell us maybe when you'll be able to say, hey, I think we're going to start releasing some information now? Is that something that is still years away, even that? Or is that something that we can maybe even expect in 2023? If you can't answer that, then obviously that's fine.
The way I'll answer it is we want to be able to communicate when we have real information.
Right, gotcha. Well,
probably when we're comfortable with that is when we'll start talking about it more.
God,
and again, this is not going to be what we call in the business the grand reveal, where suddenly one day here's everything.
Here's everything.
It's going to be a slow trickle that goes on for a long time.
Well, Mr. Greg, I really appreciate you.
Oh, they cut out so much right there.
I wanted to have an opportunity to talk to the man that's directing it and get to know you as a person. If there's anything that I've learned from Lost Ark, if the consumers and the players have a lot of respect and love for the director that's running the game, then that really goes a long ways. And I wish nothing but the best for the future of this game. Thank you.
It's wonderful. I've missed being able to talk to players about what we're working on, and we can do this again when we actually have something to say.
I'd love to.
And go into more detail. And I know something else I'll say is it's not just going to be me. Like, this team really enjoys interacting and talking to players. So there's going to be a lot of us out there. I'm not just going to be like the only spokesperson for the product.
He has 3 dogs.
Any
I've noticed 3 so far.
Comments or statements that you'd like to make before we round this out?
I guess I would encourage people to keep sharing feedback with the games you like with the developers. They're not always going to be able to answer, but they, even if it hurts sometimes, generally they do really care about the feedback and they want to know. It's hard when you have like super passionate community and you're a small developer, like some of these developers are, but don't give up. If you're passionate about the game and it's something you love, then don't get discouraged.
Sure. And what would be the best way to give feedback to the devs right now? Because I don't think there's any official channel set up. I think people just reply to your Twitter comments right now.
Yeah, I meant that in general for any game that you love. For us specifically, there's a lot of ways to communicate, and we generally go where players are. So when discussions are happening on Twitch or in Discord or Reddit, or
is there anyone from Riot in my stream right now?
We know about those and we pay attention. We can't always chime in yet, but we'll get to the point where we're in the conversations as well.
Logged out.
Greg, once again, thank you so much. That's going to do it for this video. I really appreciate you and your time. Once again, big shout outs to the Riot team and everyone that was a part of this. Thank you so much. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next video.
Yeah, feel free to like and subscribe to him. That was interesting. Yeah. For sure. Interesting. And there it is. Thank you for coming to check it out. If you made it this far, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are not subscribed already, as we do have many, many more Riot MMO videos coming out in the near future. So as always, I will see you guys all in the next video. Peace.